Good afternoon, knife nerds. Today we are going to take a look at my Koenig Arius. This is a knife nerd's wet dream. So, most people at this point, if you are a knife collector, are familiar with the Koenig Arius. I have been putting off this review for ages. I've owned this knife for 2 years at this point. And, I've been planning to review it, but every time I get ready to do it, I kind of psych myself out because I don't really know how to explain how amazing this knife really is. I don't think you can really quantify it in words. It's something that has to be handled, felt, and seen in your hand to kind of quantify what it is about this knife that is so freaking special. And so let's go for some eye candy first. We have a beautiful 3.5-inch M390 blade here. It is hollow ground, and there is a beautiful coved out swedge on the top of the blade here. So this is hollow ground as well. The swedge is actually a little bit hollow ground. And then we've got the machine satin flats, and it has a bead blasted fuller in this portion here, and the bevels are in a what they call a burnished finish, which I believe is bead blasted and then sort of, I don't know if it's tumble polished or something. I'm not really sure how Koenig achieves their finish that they refer to as burnished, but it is quite an attractive finish. So we have 6A4LV titanium handles, and all titanium hardware on this particular version in the blue anodized color. And it is a frame lock flipper riding on ceramic bearings with a ceramic detent. And what we have here is the anodized titanium backspacer, of course, this beautiful pocket clip. So this is a very, very low profile pocket clip, and it can be a little bit tight on some thicker pants. And so that's one of the few issues that I have with the Koenig Arius, it's a pretty minor gripe. I mean, I can still get it on to thicker pants. It may just not, go all the way as deep as it can go. But it's tolerable, and I do love the pocket clip, the shape, the contouring. Everything is so nice on this clip. So, that being said, with the aesthetics of this knife, I once heard somebody refer to the Koenig Arius as, they said it looks like somebody took a bald eagle's feather and turned it into a knife. And that's really what this is. It looks like a feather. The lines, the actual lines of this knife are pure knife art. There's no question about it. I mean, you've got this beautiful swooping spine here on the back of the knife. Then you've got this coved out area here where your fingers rest into. And just the lines of this knife, it's a gorgeous shape, Again, I don't know how to really do this knife justice in a review. I just don't. It's everything I could ever really want in a knife, just about. I mean, there are minor things, but it hits so many good points, and it hits those points out of the park, okay, that the little minor gripes that I might have are completely irrelevant compared to the overall package of the knife. And so yeah, the other gripe that I did have, aside from the pocket clip being really low profile and harder to get onto thick pockets, The edge of the lock bar cutout here, or the lock bar relief here, is a little bit sharp. And the reason that it's like that, let me grab my flashlight here. The reason that it's like that is because the insert is right next to the edge, okay? So they can't really roll that edge over and chamfer it off like some other knives would be designed. So it's a little bit sharp here. And I don't know if, and again, on the Koenig group on Facebook, somebody had posted a thread like a month ago or something that said, if you could change anything about the Koenig Arius, what would it be? And the only thing I could really come up with at that time was that this jimping was a little bit sharp here. And I don't know if that's something that could be, refined in future renditions of the knife. And it's tolerable. It's not that bad. You only start to notice it if you're incessantly fidgeting with the knife. And this is an extremely fidgety knife. So, I have noticed those edges being a little bit sharp. And that's it. Those are the only gripes that I have that I can really think of at the moment. It could be a little thinner behind the edge. But this is made to be able to handle some abuse. It's not a dainty knife. And so it doesn't have a really thin, dainty edge. It's hollow ground. It's quite slicey enough. It cuts very well. But, I think behind the edge, this thing is like 22 thousandths. And so that's a pretty robust edge. I mean, if they could get that down to 19 or even 18 or somewhere around there, I feel like it would be a much better cutter than it actually is. But again, minor gripe. It cuts perfectly fine. Nobody would have any complaints about the way this knife cuts unless they're looking for something that's just a super, super fine slicer. So, that being said, we've kind of covered the aesthetics here. Let's talk finishes a little bit more. The bead blasted finish that they do on these scales is very unique, because I don't think they actually sand the titanium pieces smooth before they bead blast them. So you can actually, it's probably not going to show up very well on the camera here, but you can actually see the machine marks, the machine finishing on the scale through the bead blasting. Okay, and I don't know what it is about this finish, but it makes this finish extremely durable. Okay, I have, handled a lot of bead blasted titanium. I've bead blasted titanium myself, and generally speaking, bead blasted titanium scratches fairly easily, but Koenig's does not. And I think it's due to the machine finishing that they do on these handle scales, and then not knocking any of that down or smoothing it out and just bead blasting right over the machining. And it gives it a pretty unique look, and it gives it this durability. As you can see, I don't have any wear on this knife. I've owned it for 2 years. I've carried it. I've used it. The only wear I have is some minor scratches on the pocket clip from, rubbing up against things when I'm carrying the knife. But there are no wear marks on the titanium of the scales at all. And so, whatever Koenig does to create this bead blasted finish on their titanium it's an impeccable finish. So, again, the finish work on the blade, the finish work on the scales is just above reproach. And yeah, they send you a beautifully sharpened knife too. I think I read that Bill actually does the sharpening on a wicked edge. And so you get a nice refined edge. I have sharpened this, of course. I've had it for 2 years, so mine's a little shiny. Not quite a mirrored edge, but it is a semi-polished edge, which I kind of prefer on my user knives. I like to have a sort of a kind of a semi-satin finish, kind of a working edge, but with the ability to just pop hairs. I like a really razor sharp edge, but I also don't like it fully mirrored. And so that's the type of finish that I've done on my Koenig Arius here. So when the knife is closed, it is a bit wide this direction, but I don't notice that at all when it's in my pocket. The width of this knife has never ever bothered me. It carries very well. It weighs in at 5 ounces, and the balance between the blade and the handle is impeccable. There is a lot of internal milling done on the Koenig Arius. So as you can see here, big old pockets milled out on both sides. Okay. Now, one of the cool features that Koenig has always done, oh, I need that flashlight again. They actually will put the generation and the batch number inside the scale here. So you look down through the pocket clip like a sight glass, and you'll see Gen 4 B2, which means Generation 4 Batch 2. So this was an early 2020 batch for me that I actually bought this. I think I bought it in the Koenig trade group. And so when I acquired this, it was only like a month old. The guy got it and then, you know, basically caught and released it. And so I got it when it was basically brand new in 2020. And yeah, so being that it was a batch 2, it did used to have the old style stainless pivot here. So I actually had one issue with this knife, and it didn't present itself until about 3, 4, or 5 months ago or so. What had happened was I had carried the knife so much that the blue anodizing had started to fade on the backspacer. So I was going to re-anodize my backspacer, which is, you know, I do anodizing, so I have all the equipment and I know what voltage it is, so it was not going to be a big deal for me to just, you know, take it apart and re-anodize my backspacer. There are 2 stainless steel pins in here, in addition to the screws that actually hold this this backspacer real steady into the assembly there. And one of those pins became lodged in the backspacer, in the titanium backspacer. I could not get it out. I ended up damaging the pin, totally my fault. And so I said, you know, I messaged Koenig, and these guys, their customer service is just impeccable, y'all. I'll go into that further, but so I messaged Koenig. They got right back to me within a day. I said, hey guys, I need a new backspacer, and I need both of the stainless pins I need replaced because I damaged my pins and it's stuck in the old backspacer and I can't get it out. So they did that. They went ahead and sent me the new style backspacer. So the generation, the batch 2 Koenig that I had did not come with this new style of backspacer where it's like it's kind of a semi-floating backspacer out here at the tip. You see how you can see through it, and you can see one of the stainless pins there. So that didn't used to be there. This was a refinement that they did somewhere around batch 4, 5, 6, somewhere around there. I can't remember. And so they sent me the new style backspacer, 2 brand new pins, and I went to put it together, and my screws would not thread into the new backspacer. I don't know why, for whatever reason. There were probably, you know, maybe something changed a little bit between the screws during those refinements that they did there. So I went ahead and I ordered a new batch of screws. And when I got those new screws, the new screws fit, but they were like, I think they stopped at some point. Oh, I remember what it was now. So the new screws threaded into the backspacer, but one of them was like, you know, this pocket back here, they're kind of countersunk, and that hole was just a little too small for one of the screws, and the screw wouldn't sink all the way into the handle. So I said, okay, well, that's not something that I can handle, so I need to go ahead and send this in. So I messaged Koenig. I told him what the problem was. I sent it in, and I said, hey guys, while it's there, do you think you could possibly upgrade my pivot to the new style titanium pivot so that I get all matching blue hardware. And they were like, yeah, man, we'll do that for you. And so, it's not something that they had to do. They just didn't have to do that, but they really go out of their way to bring the best customer service in the business to you as a customer of theirs. And it's not the first time, guys. In fact, this is not my first Koenig Arius. This is my fourth Koenig Arius, okay? I had actually 3 Generation 2 Arius in various patterns. And until I was actually without an Arius for about a year at one point, where I had sold off those other 3 for whatever reason, and because they weren't exactly flawless, right? I'm a picky son of a bitch. You guys know this. So, I would find a little gripe with the little thing or whatever, and then I would end up selling it off and saying, oh, I'll just pick up another Arius down the road. You can't really do that these days. Arius are much harder to get now because their popularity has climbed dramatically since Generation 2. But that being said, so they went ahead, they fixed the little screw problem back here, installed my new backspacer, and hooked me up with the new titanium pivot. So this batch 2 has all of the refinements that happened between batch 2 and batch 7. Now they're on batch 7, or maybe working on batch 8. I don't know. They're up there. Okay. So now my Arius is fully updated to what all the others are now. And so that was pretty epic for me. Koenig really, really knocks it out of the park with customer service, guys. And I cannot stress that enough. They really do. They care about the customer's happiness. They pay attention to what customers are looking for. If somebody comes on and says, hey man, my Arius has a Hoosier or what's its problem, and I don't like this about it. If it's something that they feel that they can refine and make better, they're going to do it. So I remember an interview with Bill Koenig from several years back, right? Where the guy interviewed him and he asked him, are you guys planning on doing any different models? And Bill was like, you know what? We're not going to do anything new right now. I'm just want to focus on perfecting what we have, which is the Arius. And they did that, guys. To see a company that, they didn't just put out a good product and say, here, there it is. That's what it is. We're never, this is as good as it gets. They literally took the Arius from their Generation 2 into Generation 4, and they refined every flaw that the knife had along the way. The Generation 2 had a sharp pointed flipper tab, which kind of with a hook shape, similar to like a hinderer, except even pointier than a hinderer. And they redesigned the flipper tab at Generation 3, and the Gen 3s had this style of flipper tab where they completely rounded it off. They gemmed the front of it, and it's the best flipper tab I've ever touched in my life, hands down. It really is. And so, not only that, but between Gen 3 and Gen 4, there were more refinements. They continued to refine the knife by making these chamfers deeper. They took the lock bar insert and they scooted it forward. They changed the way that the lock bar cut is shaped here. It used to be kind of rounded on the Gen 3, and now they got this more angular cut here. But the reason they did that, because they actually took the detent and pushed it closer to the blade, so that when you disengage the blade and you get, up onto that detent ball very early, okay? So that you're not feeling that detent ball hit the edge of the blade like you do on some knives that are not designed very well. The way that they did it, they pushed that detent ball up and made it, they refined that from Generation 3 to Generation 4. There were so many little refinements, guys, that, all the way from Gen 2, they fixed the flipper tab and they did other things. And then at Gen 3, they got new, better bearings that are, as far as I know, exclusive to Koenig. I've never seen those bearings in another knife. They are a Delrin style bearing with 10 balls per side, and they're very nice, very precision made, high quality bearings. And they did that, and then the refinements just continued, man. They did all this extra chamfering work and refined all of these lines. Everything is knocked down and smooth. It's even chamfered on the inside here. There's a nice chamfer you can see there along those inside edges, where other companies leave that inside edge sharp and you can feel it in hand. Koenig went the extra mile and knocked down all of those edges. They rounded out this area to make the access here easy to get to. Just so many refinements. And I truly believe that with the Generation 4, they perfected the Arius. So, I don't think they're done yet. I really don't. Maybe they are, because this is perfect. This is a perfect freaking knife. But Koenig just they don't know how to quit, okay? So I think they will continue to do other things with the Arius. They are putting out so many insane custom-made versions of the Arius now that it is just mind-blowing, okay? This is the lowest base model Arius that exists today. Commonly referred to as the PJ or plain Jane Arius. I think these run around I want to say around 700 now. Maybe it's 685, something like that. If you can get your hands on one. It seems to be very exceedingly difficult to catch a Arius drop and get a brand new one. They move around on the aftermarket quite frequently, but catching a drop for the Arius is exceedingly difficult in 2021, okay? And probably not because they're just not making enough of them on purpose, but if you have been following Koenig, they are in the midst of refining the mini Arius and getting that ready for release in 2022, hopefully. And so, I think a lot of their efforts are being focused towards putting out a new model, which is, a smaller version of the Arius. And so they are still making the Arius, of course, but they're just not making as much of them. And they're making all of the customs at the same time, and those customs that they're doing require a lot more attention to detail, a lot more machine work, and things like that. And the customs are, let's just say they're way out of my price range. I can't afford a custom Arius. I cannot. I wish I could. And, who knows, maybe I hit the lotto one day. If I ever do, I guarantee you I will buy a custom Arius, because they are beautiful, guys. As beautiful and amazing as the plain Jane Arius is, the customs are like, take this and push it up to volume 12, okay? And so they're just doing all these insane materials from carbon plate. You've got the carbo quartz and the bronze carbon fibers, and just I can't even go into it. They do the most beautiful custom Arius out there, and I've seen some mind-blowing stuff. But yeah, that being said, now let's talk about the action here, because that's really the standout thing about the Arius. Not just that it's a work of art, not just that it's a piece of serious quality manufacturing, but the action on this knife is just above and beyond just about anything else out there on the market. As far as bearing flippers go, the Arius is tippity top of the food chain. And I mean that in the sense that I've owned knives that are significantly more expensive than this, and they don't even come close to touching this action. So first of all, it's the break of the detent. It feels like you've got a dry oak tree twig in your hand, and you took that dry twig and you snapped it in half. When you press this flipper tab, it feels like a twig snaps when the detent breaks. And you get this beautiful harmonic sound when the blade locks up. It's such a crisp break that it's like, if you're into firearms and you know what a really crisp trigger break truly feels like on a custom trigger, that's how the Arius feels when you flip the knife. It feels like a custom trigger. That break, the detent break, I have never felt this on any other knife. Nothing comes even freaking close. It's crisp. It's like that twig breaking, right? It's glassy, crisp detent break. Now, the next thing is, of course, the closing action. So, like I mentioned, you've got the detent ball up there fairly close to the blade. As soon as I disengage, the detent ball is already on the blade, and it's just a guillotine. And it's a smooth guillotine. It's not like a freaking Spyderco with a compression lock where it just it falls shut and it feels like shit. No, this feels glassy smooth. Like, okay, so I once described it like this. Most knives on bearings, they feel like beer cans rolling on a concrete driveway. The Koenig Arius feels like marbles rolling on a glass coffee table. That is how smooth action really is, guys. It's ridiculous. Okay, the sounds are beautiful. The feel, the feedback is beautiful. So on to the opening hole here, which you can indeed reverse flick, and it is every bit as good as the flipper tab with that crisp snap break every time. Just phenomenal action any way you put it. So you can thumb roll it, not a thumb roll, a thumb flick, but since your fingers are kind of on the lock bar, it's a little bit harder to do in this position. You need to get your thumb up here kind of wedged up against that edge, and then you can thumb flick it out. So not my favorite way to deploy it, but it does work, and it works well if you know exactly how to do it. The less pressure you put on that lock bar with your fingers, the better. Now, that is one negative that some people might have with the Arius. There are no lefty versions that I'm aware of, and this is an extremely right-hand biased knife. Lefty EDC, he has tried the Arius a few times, and he simply cannot use the knife because since he's left-handed, when he goes to try and finger flick the knife, your thumb is sitting right on that lock bar and you just can't do it, right? So pressure on the lock bar does affect the opening. If you're a right-handed guy, this is not an issue for you whatsoever, okay? If you're a left-handed guy, it's not happening, right? But the flipper tab still works beautifully for a lefty, obviously. I'm going left-handed here. I'm not a left-handed person. I suck left-handed at everything that my left hand would ever possibly do. But I'm able to deploy this knife with no problem. I just cannot use the middle finger flick. And that's why lefty hates it. Oh, that was a lucky one there. I guess if you get your finger a little further down, maybe. Yeah, that's what it is. If you get your finger a little further down, you can kind of do it, but it's still difficult. And you got to kind of hold it funky so that your thumb's not on the lock bar, etc. So not a lefty friendly knife. That's okay by me, guys. I'm right-handed, so sorry, lefty. Anyhow, yeah, man. I'm so glad that I'm finally breaking down and doing this review because this knife it's a forever knife for me. And it's difficult for me to put a forever knife in my collection. In fact, this might be the only forever knife that I own, guys. I have knives that I love, and I keep telling myself, yeah, I'm not going to sell that one. But I usually end up selling them. The Arius is never going anywhere. Never. I've had people offer me crazy shit for this knife. It's not going anywhere. This is my baby. It's my keeper. It's my forever knife. They'll fucking bury me with this thing. Okay? And if I ever get rich, I'll buy a custom, and I'm still keeping my PJ for everyday carry, okay? That's how much I love the Koenig Arius. And when the mini Arius comes to market, if, by some freaking miracle of a chance, I get lucky enough to score one, I am going to try to score one, okay? I want the mini as well. It's a little bit smaller, but not too small. Like, they didn't shrink it down to where it's not a fun knife. It's just a little bit smaller size than the full-size Arius. This is a 3.5-inch blade, so they went 3-inch blade, right? Pretty, obvious choice there. And so, yeah, when that mini Arius comes to market, I am really going to try and get my hands on one to go with Big Brother here. Now, what else to say about Koenig? They have this way of continually refining knives that is impressive. Their customer service is impressive. And, they're right here in America. They source all of this material in America, except for the M390, of course. Their blade steel of choice, which you have to close the knife to see it. I do believe there it is. But the M390 badge resides right there. So they are using the Danish or Dutch or whoever, I forget which country, the Udenham Bowler steel comes from. So, but they use that. Obviously, M390 is the #1 most requested steel in the EDC world today, and has been for several years. And so that's why they use the Bowler steel. I wouldn't mind seeing a batch of Arius with some CPM 20 CV. I wouldn't mind that, but they have been using the M390 now for a few years, and I think they're probably going to stick with that for the most part. Man, what else to say? So Koenig didn't actually design the Arius. I do believe the original designer of the actual Arius was TJ Schwartz. And TJ Schwartz has a lot of affiliation with Millet Knives. The Generation 1 Arius was never made by Koenig Knives. It was actually made by Millet Knives, and it was a TJ Schwartz design. And I don't know the full story. I'm just kind of relaying, the stuff that I've read about over the years. So it was originally a TJ Schwartz design. Bill Koenig hooked up with TJ Schwartz, and I don't know if they shared some freaking things, and then Bill Koenig ended up with the the design for the Arius via TJ Schwartz. And so man, what else to say? We've gone down a long road here about this knife, and it's difficult to get one, guys. This is the knife nerd's knife. That's what this is. If you are a collector of knives, you're breaking into higher end knives, you're starting to, spend $500 plus on a knife, the obvious transition is a Koenig Arius, because its value, if you get the PJ, I'm not saying the customs are value, but if you get the plain Jane Arius for whatever they cost now, $685 or whatever, it's value for the money, because it's one of the best knives on the market, hands down. And you're paying less than you would for, like, say, a Shirogorov production knife, where you're paying $1,100 to get into a basic production Shirogorov, right? Well, Koenig is coming in a little cheaper than that, a few $100s cheaper than that, and you're getting something that is on par, if not better, than that Shirogorov, right? And so it's still value for the money today, even though it's extremely difficult to get. And, I think everybody that is breaking into higher end knives or is buying lots of high end knives has to try an Arius. You have to try it eventually, whether you borrow your buddies or whatever the case may be. Get your freaking hands on one, try it. You might fall in love, because this is a knife that is easy to fall in love with. Like I said, I owned 3 of them that I got rid of because of little, whatever reasons. Maybe, I think one of them I had to actually sell because my business was going like shit and I had to pay some bills. So that one I didn't really want to get rid of, but I kind of had to. But, you know, that was a different time. And so this one is never going anywhere because this thing is perfect. The detent is exactly the tension that I want, you know, where it's got that ultra crisp break, but it's still glassy, drop shutty smooth. And so this is my baby. So this is getting to be pretty deep into the woods here at 35 minutes. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. I hope you subscribe to my channel because I do plan on bringing you guys more content and, you know, cool stuff, cool knives, man. You know, I don't do a whole lot of budget knives because I just can't afford budget knives. You know, my money goes to shit like this, so I can't afford to buy every $50 knife that comes along because I'm saving for knives like the Koenig Arius, right? So you won't see a whole ton of budget reviews here, but you'll see one once in a while. Somebody will loan me one, or I'll buy something on a whim just to check it out or whatever. But for the most part, you know, I do a lot of mid-range, you know, $200 on up to $1,000 type of reviews. And so that's kind of my my wheelhouse. We'll call it that. 200 to $1,000. That's my wheelhouse. I don't go much above that grand. In fact, $1,000 is like grail territory for me. And so, that being said, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and later.